Hey folks, it is time to go through my November reads. I read 5,058 pages in November across 14 books. So not my best month, but still pretty damn good. I listened to 66.66 hours of audiobooks this month. My biggest book was Edge of Eternity by Ken Follett. This is 1,004 pages. And my oldest book was Rebecca by Daphne DuMaurier, which is from 1938. I'm diving straight into the stats in this video, as you can see, so we're going to go straight into the genres. I read 1 contemporary, 1 sci-fi, 2 non-fiction, 1 mystery thriller, 2 historical fictions, and 7 fantasy. Then for the nationality of the author, I read 1 Japanese author, 3 authors from the United States, 1 Kenyan author, 1 Northern Irish author, 1 Canadian author, and 7 English authors, or 7 books by English authors. There's a lot of them by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Then for the format that I read the books in, so first of all we have 3 paperback books, 2 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, 2 hardback books, and 4 mixed media books, so this means I read them as a combination, usually digitally and physically. So I read 1 book that was a mix of audio and physical paperback, 1 book that was a mix of hardback and ebook, and 2 books that were a mix of paperback and ebook. Those are the stats. Let's get into the books. I'm filming this, not when I'm uploading it, but I'm filming this on the 2nd of December, and yet it feels like months ago when I read The Menu of Happiness by Hisashi Kashiwai. This is the 3rd book in the Kamagawa Food Detective series, and this one was very kindly sent to me by the folks over at Book Break, and this whole series is following a man who used to be a police detective and now works in a restaurant, and with the help of his daughter, he tries to find and recreate very specific meals for people. This is of course then talking about the reason that this meal was so significant to the person, how this impacted them psychologically, how it impacted their relationships, what they should do with their life going forwards, in a very typical way for the chosen books that are often translated from Japanese into English at the moment, with these kind of cozy ones. I really love this series. There isn't too much to say because each book in the series is the same as the last in the concept, but I enjoy each of the individual stories. So if you've read the first one, you should like books 2 and 3 as well, if you've read it, if you liked it. Important distinction. I'm really enjoying the series. I'm looking forward to reading more in it. I love these little stories, and yeah, I had a great time with this book. Then a very different read. I read Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, also sent to me by Book Break. Thank you very much, folks. And this is a space opera. Not something I read much of, but I loved it. It was so good. So this is the 10th anniversary edition, so that means that there's some extra bonus content in the back, some short stories and things, and I really enjoyed all of this. I gave it, I think, a 4.5 star, so didn't quite hit the 5-star marks. It doesn't help that at the end of October, so not long before I read this, I read House of Open Wounds and gave it 5 stars, and it's one of my best books of the year. So it wasn't helped by that. But this space opera is following humanity. There is humanity on a spaceship that's been floating for a while. It was sent off from Earth with a load of frozen cargo, frozen humans, to populate another planet. There is also a human that is orbiting around a planet that they had used for an experiment, and they sent down something that was supposed to speed up evolution. And it was supposed to do it on monkeys, and it did it on spiders. So we're following the person orbiting the planet, we're following the humans that are trying to settle somewhere in space, and this planet looks like it'll host humans, and we're also following the spiders. If you have any issues with spiders, I will say that I know at least 1 person, no 2 people, sorry, with arachnophobia who have read this and said it's fine. So the imagery is not an issue for 2 people I know with arachnophobia. So you should be able to enjoy it. This is just so well written. Tchaikovsky is such a good writer. Oh my gosh, how did it take me so long to get to this? There's just so much discussion on the importance of humanity as a concept rather than as a people, but then also of keeping people alive, and then the ethics of the experimentation, and then what makes a human versus AI, essentially, and how different societies can come up. The spider society is heavily matriarchal, and so seeing that, kind of seeing humanity's patriarchal society reflected in their matriarchal, because it's not matriarchal how we would do and how we have matriarchal societies. It's matriarchal in that the women act like men do on Earth. And so we see that reflected in there, and we see the evolution of humanity sped up, because of course that's what this drug is supposed to do to be monkeys, but is spiders. And we see people and spiders fighting for their survival, and I am very excited to carry on with this series. I believe it is It was a trilogy, and then I think a 4th book is coming out to expand the series, so I'm looking forward to diving in. Just saying. I love Adrian Tchaikovsky, give me everything he's ever written. Then I read a non-fiction, and I don't think you'll be able to see, but this is Invisible, ADHD, and this is written by a woman called Shanna Pearson, who has ADHD and is someone who works with those with ADHD to try and get them to be able to function with it in our current day society. This is very focused on women. So female presenting women, this is what this book is primarily about. I believe that is because, one, obviously Shanna Pearson is a woman herself, and so that is the type of ADHD that she has personal experience with, but also a lot of ADHD until more recent years has been very focused on the male version with explicit hyperactivity and all of the stereotypes of ADHD, and so this instead tackles the lesser known side of it. And there are actions for you to take that are clearly marked with ticks. I do need to go back through and try some of these. So for context, I don't have a diagnosis, but we assume I have some sort of neurodivergency somewhere. We're not entirely sure what. It could be ADHD, which would be interesting. But yes, so there's something going on. So I do want to try some of these because I have noticed some of the things that she said are a struggle I have struggled with, so I do want to try some of them. But it's a really interesting way to kind of break down how this impacts people and how this then impacts society and how society impacts them. So it was a really interesting look at ADHD. I didn't love it. It was good, but I didn't love it. So this is because, for me, not all of these facts were brand new, because I read a lot about ADHD and various different neurodivergences and how they appear in women, because of course a lot of the studies are on men. If you haven't done that, and if you are curious about how that perpetuates in women, then this is actually a really good book to pick up. This was also sent to me by Book Break, as is the next book. Thank you very much, folks. I'm very appreciative. I always want to say so that you folks know when I've been gifted a book. It doesn't change my review, just so that you know. Also by Book Break, this was Forget You Saw Her by Noelle W. Ihli. I read Ask for Andrea earlier this year, in August I believe, and I really enjoyed it. It was a fast-paced thriller, mystery thriller, with a fantastical aspect in it. This is a prequel to that one, and is another fast-paced thriller mystery with the fantasy aspect in it with ghosts, and I really enjoyed it. This is just so good. So we're following a woman called Sabina, and when she was 17 she had a childhood pregnancy, a teenage pregnancy, and she gave up the baby. She's then contacted by a detective because that baby now, many years later, is missing, and they wanted to do a DNA check with the birth mother to check that it was actually her DNA they were finding. So they've done this, the daughter's missing, and Sabina goes, I need to find my child, because she never wanted to give her daughter up for adoption, but her parents convinced her this was the best route to take. So she then goes to the town, the small town where her child had been living and had been adopted, and goes to learn more about what happened and where her daughter may have run off to. Is she safe? No. And there's a lot of dynamics here between the adoptive parents, Sabina, the townspeople. There's a lot about religion in here because this is a Mormon town. It's very, very interesting, very quick to read. I struggle to put it down, and it's just, I really enjoy Noelle W. Ihli's thrillers, mysteries, because they add in that fantastical aspect, but it doesn't, of course it makes it a fantasy book, but it doesn't make it a fantasy book. Instead it just adds an extra dynamic to the mystery thriller that is just so engrossing. Next up, I read Rebecca by Daphne DuMaurier. 5-star read. Oh my gosh, this book. So at the very beginning of, I say the very beginning, for the first, you can see where I've cracked the spine. For the first like 200 pages of this, I was reading it really slowly. I was actually really busy at home, and so I was squeezing in like a couple of chapters, 1 or 2 each day, and it was really slow, and I was just like, okay, I'm not disenjoying it, so just keep reading. Like I'm having a good enough time. And then I got to around the 200 page mark, and I was like, okay, time to read today's chapters. Squeeze them in. I did not stop reading. I went to bed at I don't know what time in the AM because I couldn't put the book down. I also didn't realise, but my other half has told me multiple times since, that he would like turn around to like check on me because he's like, you're up late. He stays up late gaming, but he's like, why are you here? And I'm just there going, it's so good. This book is so good. I have no memory of doing this, but I did. Oh god, what do I even say about this book? On a trip to the south of France, the shy heroine falls in love with Maxime de Winter. So he is a widower who has went to the south of France for a breath of fresh air, and we are following a young woman who is a companion to an old lady because she's actually from too low down in the social status and she's an orphan, and this man finds her and ends up marrying her and taking her back to Manderley, his home. But when she goes back, things aren't as she hoped they would be, and the shadow of Maxime's first wife, Rebecca, hangs over her, so the former Mrs. De Winter, and it seems to hang over the household, hang over everyone else who knew her, and also hang over their relationship. And this is such a slow burn. Someone just needs to give the new Mrs. De Winter a hug, some friendship. Just speak to each other, people. But this is so, so good. The ending... But yeah, if you haven't read this book, you need to. It's so good, it's so good, it's so well written. I did not understand that, you see everyone talk about this book. You see everyone say, oh yeah, Rebecca's really good, oh my god, this has sat on my TBR for years! Oh, it's so good, it's so good. Calm. Then the next book, I have been holding up Legends and Lattes in my stack, but it's actually Bookshops and Bonedust, so I'll pop that on screen in the relevant spot. And this is the prequel in the Legends and Lattes universe by Travis Baldree, and I have an arc of the next book, Brigands and Bread Knives, so I needed to read the prequel. And this was so fun, as expected. I didn't love it as much as I loved Legends and Lattes, but I did really enjoy it. We get some backstory of Viv, the main character in Legends and Lattes, and we also get to meet some new characters in here. I really enjoyed it, no one is surprised. It is a good mix of like coziness, but also action and movement. And yeah, it was just a fun time. I was blasting through it without even really thinking about it, so it was a really fun read. Then a book that I read that I've had on my TBR for far too long, and that is The Girl in the Steel Corset by Kady Cross. I was gifted this by the lovely Carrie from Caring for Books because I said I wanted to read more steampunk, so she sent me one, and I left this on my TBR for far too long. I think I just thought, oh, it'll be a fun read, it'll be an easy read, I can squeeze it in at some point, and I never squeezed it in because it was slightly too long to squeeze. It's not long, but it's like 500 pages, and the writing is like ever so slightly smaller than normal, and so it just never got squeezed anywhere. So instead I made it a priority and I read it and I enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to carry on with the series. I would if I didn't have so much I was already reading. Like if I wasn't reading 140 books on my shelves, I would 100% pick up the sequel. It's fun. I think I will, but I think it will take a while. But this was really fun. I don't even know how to describe it. We follow a young girl. There is actually a prequel included in this version, but I won't discuss that. We'll only discuss the main novel. We're following a young woman who is in service. She's a house worker. She ends up being put upon by one of the men of the house, and he tries to sexually assault her. She manages to get away because she has unusual strength, and so she beats him up and runs away, and ends up getting picked up by this duke who was out and about that day. And it turns out that the duke and his friends also have some strange powers, and she is in their house being cared for because she is injured. They then figure out about these powers and realise that there may be something going on there, and then they start trying to help the country. How am I describing this? They start trying to help the country because it's set in Victorian England and stuff is going down, and they all work together and end up as friends, and it's a really fun YA book. I'm glad I read it, and I do plan on continuing the series, but it will probably wait a while again. Then I read Made Things by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This was wonderfully sent to me by the folks over at Book Break. Thank you very, very much. And in this book, we're following a main character named Coppelia, and there are little puppets. And I mentioned this to a few people because I was really excited, and lots of people haven't heard of Coppelia. I used to do ballet as a child, and so I did a performance of Coppelia, so it's always been something that I've known since I was little. But it is like an old story, and the original story is that Coppelia is this beautiful young girl that sits on a balcony, and these men keep trying to propose to her. Dating, marriage, love me, and she ignores them all until one man decides to break in to the flat to actually see her face to face and figure out why she's ignoring everyone. There are puppets involved, she has a very caring father, things seem to go wrong. I don't want to spoil the story if you want to go and experience it. I love Coppelia, it's so nostalgic for me. And so whilst this is not the story of Coppelia, this is not a fantastical version of that, it does have Coppelia as the main character, and she has tiny puppet-like companions, some made of wood and some made of metal. So I was immediately like, yes, give it to me, please. But for the actual book, so these two on the front are the puppet-like companions, but they are completely autonomous. They are alive, but one is made of wood and one is made of metal. These tiny creatures are able to procreate by just carving a new version and bringing life into it, and that is how they create new life for these tiny little human beings that aren't human. So we follow some of their story and learn more about them, whilst we're also following Coppelia, who is a street rat, a street urchin, and she ends up getting caught up in some business, in some crime syndicate business that she wasn't expecting. Her parents were master crafters, which is why the little people are interested in her. That then gets caught up in a plot to create a huge homunculus, like a giant metal human, and she's involved because she has the crafts and the skills to know what to do with that and to potentially break it and or make another one. And this just kind of explores all of that. It's a very short little book. It's 200 pages with a short story included at the end, so it's a really short little book. Really enjoyable. I loved seeing the mini homunculi and seeing how these tiny humanoid creatures interact with the world in a very different way because of the material they're made up of. It was a really, really interesting read, as always, from Adrian Tchaikovsky. I love everything he writes, apparently. And yeah, I had a wonderful time. Then I read The Heart of Reproach, which is a novella set in the Tyrant Philosopher's world by Adrian Tchaikovsky, so more Tchaikovsky. A lot of him this month. I'm not mad. And this one is set following someone who we did learn about in the first book of the series, and it's intended to link us further into the third book. And we're following them, I don't want to spoil it because it links in with the first one, we are following them as they are kind of a boundary between the magical stuff and the police state. I'll say that much, I don't want to spoil it. Then for my Discworld read of the month, and that was Thud by Terry Pratchett. This is a City Watch novel, and we are following Sam Vimes. This is all about Coombe Valley, so you will, if you've been reading the Discworld novels, will have heard about this in earlier iterations. It is essentially the battle between the trolls and the dwarves, and the reason why they hate each other. And the anniversary of that is coming up, and disruption and discord is being sown in Ankh-Morpork. So Sam Vimes is trying to settle that down, to figure out what's going on. People seem to be trying to dig up extra stuff this year around, and he's trying to solve the crimes of why certain artefacts from the time have been stolen, and he also now has a young son, and so he has to get back at 6 p.m. every night to read to him Where's My Cow? Obviously, this was fantastic. This is amazing, as always, with Terry Pratchett. He does such a good discussion on like xenophobia towards different groups, on the police state, on familial boundaries, on everything. This was so enjoyable and a really interesting end that I hadn't been expecting. And then, I then read Where's My Cow? By Terry Pratchett. This is the book that goes along with the one in the story, so it simultaneously has a bit extra in it with Sam Vimes reading it to his son, but also contains, can you even see it, also contains the story itself. And this is just silly and fun. You can read this to a child if you happen to have one in your vicinity for some reason. And whilst it's a very quick read and a bit of a silly read, it's a very fun addition to the world. Then I finally finished my 10 books that will expire if I don't read them in 2025, because I read the 1004 pages that make up Edge of Eternity by Ken Follett. Also finishing out the Centuries trilogy, and also finishing out The Last Thing I Will Ever Read by this author. What a celebration! This took me most of the month to do. So, this series, Book 1, World War I, Book 2, World War II, Book 3, is the Cold War. In all of them we're following the same families, if not the same people, depending on how long Ken Follett has them live. They are from Wales, from London, from Russia, from America, from Germany. We're following them throughout time, through this whole period in the 20th century. I'll mention my negatives first, which is that Ken Follett isn't very good at writing women, and he has a lot of women characters in these books, because they were quite important throughout this whole thing. And I will say he's gotten better over time. In his earlier books, it is almost offensively bad. If you're a male, you probably won't notice. So go forth, have fun. But if you're female, you're like, what the fuck? But it does improve over time. This one I think is actually slightly worse than Winter of the World, but not so bad as Pillars of the Earth, with my review where everyone likes to scream at me. For the positives, though, I will say that the overarching story being ran through these 3 books that culminate in like 3,000 pages is incredibly well done. The storyline is really well done. You see some things tied up at the end here that we first had at the beginning of book 1. Also, the insane amount of research that Follett has done for these 3 periods. I know the most about World War II, everything in there, so accurate, so many like little gems or like little nuggets of information that are so often overlooked and not mentioned by most people, included, made like as important as it would have been at the time. And so from what I've seen in books 1, World War I and the Cold War version, done exactly the same thing. Immense amounts of research, no conspiracy theories other than where the characters may mention them. Nothing like that. It's all just solid historical fact and record. Of course, it wasn't actually that long ago in terms of history, so we have a lot of this noted down, and he's just done an immense amount of research for these books. So if you like historical fiction, and if you can deal with your women being badly represented, and or are not a woman, then this series is fantastic. I will never reread it. I don't plan on keeping it on my shelves forever. I will keep it for a time, for 2 reasons. One is that I read 3,000 pages in this series, and the other is that my dad went to so much effort to get me these books because he knew I wanted to read the whole series, and so yeah, that's the main reason. But I'm so glad I finally finished this. Like I said, the research done is impeccable. I did enjoy it. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, which I know is low for a 1,000 odd page book, but I didn't expect to rate it any higher. I had a good time with this series, and a bad time with this series, and I'm glad it's done. Then another book that was gifted to me by Carrie from Caring for Books, and that is Just Stab Me Now by Jill Bearup. I do want to mention before I go into this review that after I read this I discovered that Jill Bearup has been transphobic, so I want to mention that up front. I ain't fucking happy with that. Nasty. Trans lives matter. But I have read the book and so I wish to review it, but I do want to say that I will not be providing her with any more money or any more support. This is a Northern Irish author that creates TikToks. This is the book of her TikToks. And she does these videos where she is simultaneously the author and the characters. And this is the same in here. There's a slight difference in text here with like a little cross to symbolise it. So we see from the author's perspective in the author's own life, we see from the author's perspective when they're talking to the characters, and we see the actual story. It took me a little bit to get into that and into the flow of it, but I will admit that once I was into it, I did enjoy it. Like, I've rated this 3 stars. If Jill Bearup, it's not even Jill Bearup, is it? No, it is. The author in the book is called Caroline, so I was like, is it Jill? Yes. If Jill Bearup wasn't transphobic, I would have given this 4.25, but she is, so it's getting a 2.5 on Storygraph and a 3 on Goodreads. But I did enjoy this story, I'm not gonna lie, I did really enjoy the book. It is well paced, it's enjoyable, I liked seeing the very realistic main character and how the author has to give in and let her run things the way that she wants to. Yeah, this was really, unfortunately, really well written and a good time. So I do want to say that, I don't want to lie about my reviews, but she is transphobic, which is very much against all of my values, so hey. And then for my final book, I read this via ebook, and it has a long title and a author name that is in a language I'm unfamiliar with. So I'm going to read this off of my phone. So the book is Decolonizing Language and Other Revolutionary Ideas, and the author, I do apologise for my pronunciation, is Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. I'm really sorry. That is the best I can do. It is on screen. And this is a Kenyan author who has written many fiction stories, but is currently in this book writing a non-fiction about decolonizing language. This is an African-focused book, primarily focused on Kenya, but also on Nigeria, on South Africa, and it, in the first half of the book, discusses how language came to be colonized in the entire continent of Africa, as well as in specific countries, and how people have tried to fight back against that, and how certain governments, modern day governments in these countries, have then prioritised English, French, etc. as the language of education and the best language to use, even though they have so many languages already present on the continent. He then, in the second half, goes on to speak about individual people who have really highlighted the importance of these languages and of decolonizing and using English and French and the other Belgian, German, the other languages less, and stopping having such a Eurocentric focus. And it was really interesting to learn about these people because I have only heard of some of them. There was Nelson Mandela, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and also Chinua Achebe, but I hadn't heard of the other authors, and so I really enjoyed learning about that, as well as learning more about this author himself and the struggles that he himself has went through. He was imprisoned for writing in a non-colonised language. I think it might have been Kiswahili, but I'm not sure which language he wrote in. There's a few mentioned. And this was just a really educational and interesting book. The chapters aren't too long, so you're able to kind of take in these bite-sized chunks of education, and I really enjoyed learning about it. I always think that too much is written in English. Nowadays, of course, that is primarily promoted by the United States, but we were to blame to begin with. And I think it's so important that Africa is able to rid itself of the huge influence currently of Europe, and they have so much resources of their own that they can use, and instead that's getting shipped over to Europe and then we ship it back to them and they have to pay for it. So there is so much richness in Africa as a continent, both in terms of what is in the soil and in the land, but also in the culture and with the people. And this is a really great book as like an introduction to that. I really recommend it. And that is everything I read in November. What a month! Although it was a much smaller month than October, obviously that one was 19 books, what the fuck, but still 14 books with one of them being over 1,000 pages. I'm pretty happy with. Please let me know in the comments down below, have you read any of these? What are your thoughts? Do you massively disagree with me on any of them? Because I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!